The cry in the forest. Alina walked slowly through the alien woods of Ural, her boots pressing softly into the glowing moss beneath her feet. The air was thick and quiet, too quiet. She had come here alone, looking for rare plants for the medical base, but now something felt strange. The wind had stopped, and even the insects were silent. Then she heard it, a sound so soft inside it made her stop. It was not a bird or any animal. She knew it sounded like a child crying, but no human child would be out here, not on this wild and dangerous planet. She turned her head, trying to find the direction of the sound. It came again, a small whimper full of pain and fear. Alina carefully followed the noise, her heart beating faster with every step. She moved through thick trees and giant roots, glowing with faint blue light, and finally she saw it under a fallen log covered in moss and vines. A small creature was curled up. It had glowing golden fur with black spots, big green eyes full of tears, and tiny claws. It looked like a cub, maybe a mix between a leopard and something alien. It was hurt, its back leg twisted at a strange angle, and blood marked the ground near it. Alina crouched down, slowly holding out her hand. She spoke in a soft, calm voice, hoping to not scare it. The cub looked at her, but didn't run. It just whimpered again and blinked, slowly, as if it was tired or in too much pain to move. "You poor thing," she whispered, though she knew it wouldn't understand her. She gently slid her bag off her shoulder, opened her emergency medical kit, and took out a healing patch. It wasn't made for alien creatures, but it was all she had. She carefully moved closer. The cub flinched once but didn't fight her. She placed the patch on the leg and wrapped it with bandage. The cub made a tiny sound, almost like a purr, and closed its eyes. She picked it up slowly, holding it close to her chest. It was lighter than she expected, but warm and trembling. She looked around the forest, wondering if it was safe to carry it back to camp. Then the ground vibrated. A deep growl echoed through the trees. Alina froze, her eyes wide. She turned slowly toward the sound and saw the shadows moving between the trees. Something huge was coming. Something fast and angry. She couldn't see it clearly, but she felt that every step shook the ground. Every breath sounded like thunder. The cub in her arms whimpered again and tried to hide its face in her jacket. Alina backed away slowly, trying not to panic. She needed to hide. She needed to find cover before whatever it was found them. She saw a hollow tree trunk nearby, wide enough to crawl inside. She moved quickly but quietly, slipped inside and held the cub close. She didn't breathe. She didn't move outside. Heavy steps stopped right in front of her hiding spot. Then she saw them, two glowing red eyes staring through the darkness. Not blinking, not moving, they just watched, cold and full of rage. Alina didn't know what to do. She couldn't run, she couldn't fight. She was trapped. The eyes moved closer, and then the creature stepped forward into the light, and Alina saw it clearly for the first time. It was massive, with a long body covered in black and gold fur, like the cub, but older, stronger, and scarred. Its tail swayed behind it like a whip, its teeth sharp and ready to strike, and its eyes fixed on her and the cub in her arms. It was the mother. Alina's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her voice wouldn't come out. The mother let out a low growl that shook the ground. Again, not a roar, but a warning, or maybe a question. "Why are you holding my child?" The cub shifted in her arms as if sensing the mother's presence. It looked up and made a soft sound, a call full of pain but also trust. The mother took a step closer, sniffed the air, and stared right into Alina's eyes. Time stopped for a moment. The mother didn't attack. She didn't run. She just stared, and Alina stared back, not with fear, but with something else, with calm, with respect, with hope. "Please," she whispered, her voice finally returning. "I only wanted to help." The mother blinked once and then slowly stepped back, vanishing into the darkness of the forest without a sound. But Alina knew this wasn't over. The forest had eyes, and she had touched something sacred. She held the cub tighter as the cold wind returned, and a new silence filled the trees. But it was no longer peaceful. It was waiting, watching, and Alina realized she had stepped into something far bigger than herself. Something wild, something ancient, and it had just begun. The eyes in the dark. Alina stayed inside the hollow tree for a long time, holding the cub close to her chest. The forest had gone quiet again, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like something was hiding just beyond the light. Something strong and angry. The cub had stopped crying, but its body was still shaking, weak and cold. She listened carefully for sounds. But only the wind moved through the glowing leaves above her. Then she heard it, the snapping of twigs, slow, steady. Footsteps. Something was coming again, and this time it wasn't running, it was stalking. Alina held her breath, her eyes wide. She looked through a crack in the tree trunk and saw a shape moving between the trees, tall and powerful. The same glowing red eyes were there again, but now closer, brighter and unblinking. It was the mother. She knew it without doubt, but something about her had changed now. She was not roaring or rushing now. She was silent, her muscles tense, her movements careful, like a predator watching another predator. Cub stirred in Alina's arms, making a soft sound, and the mother's ears twitched. She took one more step forward, then stopped just a few feet from the tree, her eyes locked on Alina. Alina didn't move. She didn't run. She slowly shifted the cub so it could be seen better, so the mother would understand she was helping, not hurting. The mother's eyes lowered to her child and stayed there for several seconds. Then the mother did something strange. She sat down, not in a calm way, but in a position that blocked the path behind her, as if she was guarding them. Alina blinked, unsure of what to do. Was this a trick? Was the mother waiting for her to slip up, or was it something else? The wind carried a new scent, sharp and metallic. Alina smelled it too. Something was nearby, and it was not the mother. She heard a hiss behind the trees, a low growling like no creature she had ever heard before. Suddenly, the mother stood again, her ears up, her body low to the ground, her tail flicking back and forth. She was not looking at Alina anymore. She was looking past her at something approaching from the other side. Alina turned her head slowly and saw glowing yellow eyes in the distance, too high for a cub, too low for a bird. Whatever it was coming closer and fast. Mother let out a sound, deep and guttural, a warning, not to Alina, but to the thing in the dark. The cub whimpered and pressed its face into Alina's chest. Then it came out of the shadows, a creature tall, thin, with a snake-like body and 4 long legs, sharp spikes running down its spine, and a mouth full of teeth. It moved without sound, like smoke, but with speed like fire, its eyes fixed on the cub. Alina felt her heart pounding. She looked at the mother and saw no fear, only fury. The jungle mother let out a scream louder than thunder and lunged forward, claws out, teeth bared. The beast hissed and met her head on. The two collided with such force that the ground shook. Alina ducked down, covering the cub as roars and growls filled the air. Trees bent and leaves flew around her. She dared to peek through the crack and saw the mother fighting hard, her claws slashing, her teeth biting, but the beast was fast, striking with its tail and snapping its jaws again and again. Blood sprayed the ground, not just the mother's, but the beast too. Alina knew this wasn't a battle of food, it was a war for protection. The mother was fighting to save her child, but the beast was winning. Its tail slammed the mother into a tree. She hit the ground hard, struggling to rise, her leg bleeding, and bent. Alina couldn't watch anymore. She looked at the cub and whispered, "I need you to be brave," then gently placed it down inside the hollow tree and stood up, her hands shaking. She grabbed a flare from her belt, clicked it once, twice. It sparked, then burst into bright red firelight. The beast turned its head, distracted by the sudden light. The mother roared and took the chance to leap forward, biting deep into its neck. Alina waved the flare, screaming to keep the beast's attention. "Over here. Come on, leave her alone." The beast hissed and lunged toward Alina, but before it could reach her, the mother slammed into it again, this time knocking it down into a sharp rock. The beast screamed and slithered back into the trees, bleeding badly and vanishing into the shadow. Silence returned, but it was heavy. The mother lay on the ground, breathing hard, blood dripping from her wounds. Alina rushed to her side, forgetting fear. She pulled out another healing patch, her last one, and pressed it to the worst injury on the mother's leg. "Please hold still," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Just hold still for a little longer." The mother didn't growl, she didn't move, she just stared at Alina quietly, her eyes no longer angry but tired and maybe grateful. Alina stayed beside her, hands covered in blood, her body shaking. The cub crawled out and curled up beside its mother, pressing close and purring, and in that quiet moment under the glowing trees, Alina realized the forest had changed her. She was not just a visitor now, she was part of something ancient and wild. And the eyes in the dark no longer watched her with fear, but with respect. A deal without words. Alina sat on the damp moss as the stars began to fade from the sky and the twin suns of Ural peeked through the trees. The cub lay curled beside its mother, while the jungle mother rested with her eyes half open, watching everything. Even in pain, even in silence, Alina was tired, but alert, her hands stained with dried blood and her heart still pounding from the fight. She didn't speak, she didn't move much, she simply waited, unsure what to do next. The flare had gone out, leaving only the soft green glow of the forest plants around them. The mother lifted her head slowly and looked at Alina again, not with anger, not even with curiosity, but with something deeper, as if she was trying to read the human soul. Alina met her eyes and gently pointed at the wound again, showing the patch she had placed earlier. Then opened her medkit and slowly pulled out a small tube. It was a pain reliever designed for humans, but maybe it would help. She held it out with an open palm, not moving closer. The jungle mother sniffed the air carefully. Then, to Alina's surprise, she inched forward and took the tube with her teeth, not biting hard, just enough to carry it. She placed it near her paw and tapped it once, then looked back at Alina. It was like a test, a simple message saying, "I trust you, now do more." Alina knelt again beside the massive beast, her fingers trembling as she opened the tube and carefully spread the paste along the deeper wounds. The mother let out a soft breath, but didn't flinch, didn't growl. She stayed still as Alina worked. Cub crawled closer, licking its mother's face gently, as if trying to help in its own little way. The scene was so peaceful now, so different from the chaos just hours ago. Then the mother did something that made Alina stop breathing. She stretched her paw and placed it gently over Alina's wrist, not in threat, not in dominance, but in a silent bond. Alina froze, tears welling up in her eyes as she realized this was no longer a rescue. It was something else, something ancient and primal. She was being marked not with claws or wounds, but with connection. Mother removed her paw and a soft light remained on Alina's skin, a glowing print where the contact had been. It didn't hurt, it simply shimmered faintly, like the forest itself had touched her. Alina stared at it, whispering, "What is this?" But the jungle mother only stared with calm eyes before lying her head back down beside the cub. From the shadows, a new figure appeared, a tall, four-legged creature covered in moss with eyes like liquid silver. It made no sound as it approached. It looked like a deer, but its antlers were shaped like swirling vines, and its body had small insects crawling along its fur peacefully. Alina stood slowly watching it with awe. The creature came close, sniffed the air, then lowered its head toward the jungle mother, who opened her eyes and gave a low hum. The forest deer then turned its gaze to Alina and did something she would never forget. It bowed, not fully, but enough to show respect, and then it turned and vanished into the green fog as if it had never been there. Alina looked at the jungle mother, who simply blinked, and for the first time Alina spoke clearly. "Thank you for not killing me." The mother let out a soft growl that almost sounded like a laugh, then nudged the cub gently and stood on her feet. Though limping, her eyes turned back toward Alina, and she gestured with her head toward the deeper part of the woods. Alina didn't understand at first, but when the mother stepped forward, paused, and looked back again, she realized it was an invitation. She grabbed her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and followed the giant predator into the unknown. The cub walked beside her, purring and occasionally brushing against her leg like a small cat wanting attention. As they moved deeper into the forest, the trees began to change, their trunks twisted in impossible shapes, their leaves glowing brighter, and strange floating spores danced in the air. They passed a giant root that looked like a sleeping serpent and a glowing pond where fish flew above the water instead of swimming in it. Alina knew no human had ever seen this part of Ural, not even in scans, not in reports. This was the heart of the forest, the part protected by the jungle mother and her kind. They stopped at a large stone that stood like a throne covered in moss and strange markings. The jungle mother climbed up and sat tall while the cub lay at her feet, and Alina stood before them, uncertain what to do then. From all around, other creatures appeared, silent and slow beasts of all shapes and sizes, some with wings, some with scales, all watching Alina with curious eyes. The jungle mother gave one final growl, deep and low, and all the creatures bowed their heads as one. Alina's heart pounded again, but not from fear, from something else, from honor. Without a single word spoken, she had made a deal, she had passed a test, and now she was no longer a stranger in this forest, she was part of it, marked by the wild. Alina woke up beneath a giant tree whose bark shimmered faintly under the soft morning mist. She wasn't sure when she had fallen asleep, only that she had been sitting at the base of the jungle mother's moss-covered throne, watching the cub snore gently against her leg. Now the mother was gone. She sat up quickly, scanning the forest, her hand going instinctively to her side for the medkit. But then she paused. Something on her skin felt different. She looked down at her arm, and her breath caught. The mark the jungle mother had left was no longer just a faint glow, it had changed. It had spread, curling like living vines around her forearm, glowing with a soft green light. It didn't burn or hurt. In fact, it felt warm and alive. Every time her heart beat, the mark pulsed gently and synced out. She stood slowly and looked around, calling softly, "Hello, jungle mother?" But there was no sound, no reply. Only the hum of the forest and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. The cub mewed at her feet, nuzzling her ankle. Alina picked it up gently, feeling the comfort of its small warmth. She didn't know where the jungle mother had gone or why she'd been left behind. But she knew she had to move. The journey back to the village took hours. The path she had followed into the heart of the forest had vanished. Now the forest felt unfamiliar again, no more glowing deer or floating fish, no more bowing beasts. Just thick trees and curious eyes hiding in the shadows. When Alina finally stepped out of the forest into the outer fields of the human colony, she was dirty, scratched, tired, and very different. A few soldiers spotted her and rushed over. "Alina, are you all right?" one asked, eyeing the cub in her arms. She nodded slowly, too exhausted to explain. "Found it crying in the woods," she said softly. I helped both of them." They looked at each other, confused. One soldier reached for the cub, but it hissed loudly, burying its face in Alina's jacket. She stepped back. "Don't touch him. He's not a pet. He chose to stay with me." As they walked her back toward the village gates, more people gathered, whispering. Not because of the cub, but because of her arm. The glowing mark. Children pointed, elders stepped back. A scientist ran over with a scanner and waved it at the vines on her skin. Then his face turned pale. "This is not just bioenergy. It's wild forest code, the kind we've never been able to map. This isn't infection. It's bonding." Alina raised an eyebrow. "Bonding?" The man nodded slowly. "The jungle mother. She marked you. That's the only explanation. You're now linked to Ural's wild network. The planet's forest accepts you." A silence spread through the crowd. Not fear, not hate. Something else. Respect and awe. One of the older colonists, a woman with white hair and a cane, stepped forward and pointed to Alina's glowing mark. "You have been marked by the wild mother," she said in a low voice. "That hasn't happened in over 200 years. The last human who bore that mark became a bridge between the forest and our kind. But he disappeared." Alina looked at her arm. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "But you earned it," the old woman replied. "And now the forest watches you." That night, Alina stayed alone in her small cabin at the edge of the colony. The cub curled up at the foot of her bed. The glowing mark on her arm had dimmed slightly, but still pulsed gently with her heartbeat. She stared at it, wondering what it really meant. Her sleep was filled with strange dreams, eyes in the trees, voices in the wind, creatures whispering not with mouths but through the earth itself. She heard the jungle mother's voice again, soft and distant. You carry part of us now. When you bleed, we will feel it. When you cry, we will hear it. When you choose, we will remember. Alina woke with a start, sweat on her brow. She sat up and looked outside. The stars still hung above the jungle. The cub stared at her with knowing eyes. Suddenly, a warning horn blew in the colony. A bright flare shot into the sky. Red-emergency.ELINA ran outside, heart racing. Soldiers rushed to the wall. She climbed to the watchtower and looked out into the forest. Dozens of glowing eyes stared back from the tree line. But this time, they were not red, not hostile. They were green. Familiar. At the front stood the jungle mother, tall and scarred, her wounds healed. She didn't roar. She didn't move. She waited. And Alina understood. This wasn't an attack. It was a message. The wild had returned, not for war, but to speak. The hunter becomes the hunted. The jungle mother stood silently at the edge of the trees, her eyes locked with Alina. From across the colony wall, green light from her pupils shimmered in the dark, and though her teeth and claws looked deadly, she made no move to attack behind her. The forest glowed faintly, full of creatures watching, but not moving. Alina stood high in the watchtower, her breath caught in her chest, her arm glowing again as if reacting to the mother's presence. Soldiers below shouted orders. Guns powered up, drones lifted into the air, but she raised her hand and shouted, "Stop, no one fire." They hesitated, some confused, others angry. Alina ran down from the tower and pushed through the crowd. She didn't wait for permission. She walked straight through the colony gate toward the jungle mother, the cub at her heels. She could feel the heat of the rifles aimed at her back. She knew the risk, one mistake, and both she and the mother would be killed, but fear wasn't in her heart anymore. The mark on her arm burned brighter, as if guiding her step by step. When she reached the jungle mother, the massive beast lowered her head and pressed her forehead gently to Alina's chest. It was not a gesture of dominance, it was trust, a bond. Alina placed her hand on the mother's fur and whispered, "You came back." Why? The mother stepped aside, revealing something hidden in the shadows. A creature, injured, torn scales and blood covering its body. It was not a cub, it was something larger, one of the forest's own protectors, a guardian. Alina remembered seeing one of these creatures in the old records. They were peaceful hunters that helped balance the wild. Creature moaned low in its throat, clearly dying. Alina's eyes widened as she saw deep burn marks across its side. This wasn't done by another beast, it was done by a weapon, a human weapon. Who did this? She asked in a whisper, but she already knew. The jungle mother growled low and turned her head toward the colony. Her message clear: your people did this. Alina knelt beside the injured guardian. She placed her hand gently over one of the wounds and felt it pulse with heat. She pulled out her small healing device and began working fast. The mother watched quietly but tensely. Other animals appeared from the forest edge, forming a ring of silence around them. Back at the colony, alarms blared again. Someone had activated a defense drone. Alina heard the hum of engines and looked up to see a sleek drone speeding through the air, aiming for the mother. "No," she shouted, jumping to her feet. She ran toward the drone, waving both arms. "I said stand down." The drone didn't stop. Just as it neared the jungle mother, Alina threw a small flare into the sky, blinding white light exploded mid-air, confusing the drone just enough to knock it off. Course, it crashed into the mud not far away, spinning wildly. Mother let out a deep roar and turned to shield the cub with her body, but she didn't attack. Alina ran back, panting. "I'm sorry," she said again and again. "Please give me time. I'll fix this, I promise." The mother growled again, but softer this time. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over to the downed drone, sniffed it once, then crushed it with her paw. Her eyes never left Alina's face from behind. "Alina," a voice came loud and angry. It was Commander. Tarek, the colony's security chief, he marched forward, weapon drawn. Alina, get back now, that's an order. She stood firm between him and the mother, lowering her arms but not stepping aside. You don't understand, she said. This is our fault. They didn't come to hurt us. They came to warn us one of our hunters crossed the boundary, burned their guardian, shot it with a plasma rifle, and left it to Tarek sneered. We don't need peace with animals, Alina, we need security, and this is a threat. Cub suddenly let out a soft cry and walked to Tarek, its eyes wide and innocent. It didn't growl, it didn't hiss, it just stood in front of him and looked up. Tarek hesitated for 1 second, and in that second, Alina stepped in and spoke low and firm. They're not here to fight. They're here because they're scared. They know humans can destroy more than claws ever could. But they also know we can protect if we choose to. The jungle mother walked beside her and stood tall again, her wounds still visible but fading slowly. The forest behind her echoed with soft growls, calls, and whispers like a chorus. Alina looked back at the colony gate where dozens watched in silence. Her voice carried across the field. This isn't the forest asking for peace. This is the forest demanding it. You can choose war and lose everything, or you can choose understanding and gain something far stronger. She reached down and lifted the injured guardian gently as it groaned weakly. The jungle mother helped her support it as they walked together back toward the colony gate, slowly, one step at a time. No one moved, no one fired. For the first time in Ural's wild history, a human and the forest walked as one. Not enemies, not strangers, not prey and predator, but something new, something hopeful, the gift of the wild. The gates of the colony stood open but silent as Alina approached with the injured guardian supported between her and the jungle mother. The cub walked proudly beside them, its eyes shining in the early morning light. Soldiers lined both sides of the entrance, their weapons still raised but not firing, eyes full of disbelief and confusion. Alina's clothes were torn, her hands shaking from exhaustion, but her steps were steady. She passed through the gate like a bridge between two worlds, one made of steel and fear, the other of roots and instinct. The jungle mother didn't flinch at the sight of human buildings or machines. She walked with calm power, as if she had done this before long ago. And another time, the injured guardian whimpered softly and Alina shouted for a medic, but the medical team hesitated, unsure if they were allowed to treat something not human. Alina turned to them and said clearly, this creature was shot by a human rifle. It tried to defend the balance of the forest. It's not just an animal, it's a protector, and now it's dying because of us. Still, the team didn't move until the old woman from before stepped forward. She held no weapon, just a wooden staff carved with symbols from Ural's early exploration. Dazed, she looked at the guardian, then at Alina's glowing arm, and nodded. Bring it inside with her command. The medics rushed forward, not with stretchers, but with open hands. They knelt before the jungle mother, asking for permission with gestures, not words. The mother blinked once and stepped aside. The guardian was carried carefully into the clinic as villagers watched in silence inside the command center. Commander Tarek paced like a trapped animal, his face red with frustration and disbelief. We can't just allow these things into our walls. They're wild beasts. Alina has lost her mind, he shouted, pounding the table. But the scientists weren't listening. They were staring at a new energy reading pulsing through the colony systems. Since Alina entered with the creatures, the scanner showed a soft wave of forest code flowing through their power grid, not damaging it but syncing with it, as if the jungle itself had wrapped around the colony in a protective layer. Dr. Rian, the lead biologist, adjusted her glasses. This isn't a threat. This is communication. Their biofields are linking with our tech. Somehow it's a message or maybe a bond. She turned to Tarek. This has never happened in any human colony on any planet. Meanwhile, Alina sat on the floor of the clinic beside the guardian, its breathing shallow but stable. The cub rested in her lap while the jungle mother watched from the doorway, not stepping inside, but guarding from the threshold. Hours passed slowly and the sun rose higher. Villagers began bringing food and blankets, not for the animals but for Alina, someone offered her water, another placed a soft cloth over her shoulders. No one spoke much, but the mood had changed. Fear was turning into curiosity then. Just before sunset, the guardian opened its eyes. They were no longer dim, but glowing again with soft golden light. It lifted its head and looked at Alina, then at the jungle mother, who stepped forward and pressed her nose gently to its forehead. Something passed between them, silent and deep, and then the guardian stood tall, weak but proud, and walked outside. Slowly, with the cub bouncing beside it, the jungle mother followed, but before she left, she turned to Alina and paused. Alina stood slowly, her body aching. She stepped forward, and the mother leaned close, pressing her forehead to Alina's again, just like the first time, only now the mark on Alina's arm pulsed bright and sent a shimmer through the air like a breeze made of light around them. The wind picked up, and the trees just beyond the colony wall began to sway, not from wind but from movement, as if the forest itself was nodding in approval. Then the jungle mother stepped back, and from behind her a dozen smaller creatures appeared. All different, all strange yet beautiful. Some walked on two legs, others slithered or floated, but they all carried something in their jaws. Leaves, glowing crystals, small orbs of light. They placed these at Alina's feet and backed away, slowly forming a circle. The old woman from the colony approached carefully and knelt beside the gifts, her voice shaking with wonder. "This is an offering." Alina looked at her confused. Offering for what? The old woman smiled. For peace, for protection, for choosing compassion over fear. This is their way of saying you are one of them now, and the forest stands with you. Alina looked down at the items, feeling the warmth from each of them. They were not just decorations. They pulsed like living things. She touched one and felt something deep in her chest shift, not pain, not fear, but belonging. Jungle Mother gave one final growl, soft and low, then turned and vanished into the dark trees with her child and the guardian following her. The other creatures disappeared one by one until the forest was still again, but Alina knew it was never really still, not anymore. The forest had chosen her, and now it watched, not as a stranger, but as a guardian of its own. And somewhere deep in the jungle, a new song began, not of war, not of warning, but of something far older, something only heard when trust is earned. Song of the wild, welcoming a human home. The human of the green flame. The days after the offering passed quietly, but nothing in the colony felt the same. Alina walked through the pathways with the cub beside her, now strong and playful again, no longer limping but leaping over rocks and chasing glowing butterflies. Villagers watched with wide eyes, but no longer with fear. They had seen the jungle mother enter their gates and leave in peace. They had seen the guardian healed, and the mark on Alina's arm glowing like a living flame. Children whispered when she passed, calling her green flame lady, while elders nodded respectfully. Some touched her hand as she walked by, their eyes filled with something like gratitude or maybe belief. Commander Tarek had stepped down from his position without a fight, quietly moving into the background as newer leaders with open minds took control. He never apologized, but he never raised a weapon again, either in the forest. Strange things began to happen. Drones sent for mapping returned with clean data. No longer interfered by static patrols at the edge of the colony, reported peaceful encounters with wild creatures, who watched curiously but never attacked. One group even claimed to see the jungle mother from a distance, her eyes meeting theirs before she turned and vanished. The scientists had no explanation, but one thing became clear: the forest was no longer resisting the colony. Its systems were sinking in quiet ways. Power fluctuations stopped, water flowed, stronger soil became richer. Crops grew faster. It was as if the forest had made a silent decision to help. Alina knew this change came with a price. One evening, as she sat near the forest edge, the cub curled beside her. The jungle mother appeared once more. No sound, no warning. Just a soft rustle, and there she stood, tall, strong, watching with calm eyes. Alina stood slowly, her mark glowing again, not with urgency, but with recognition. The mother stepped forward, and behind her came two other figures, creatures Alina had never seen before, one with feathers that shimmered like crystal, the other with 6 arms and glowing antlers. They bowed their heads to Alina, and placed a carved object at her feet. It was a staff, simple but elegant, made of living wood and wrapped in moss, that pulsed softly with green light at its tip. A crystal sat warm to the touch. Alina picked it up, and the forest reacted. The wind moved in gentle waves, the leaves shimmered. The animals nearby froze and then bowed. The jungle mother let out a single breath, deep and low, then turned and walked away again without waiting for thanks or words. Alina held the staff and sat back down. The cub climbed onto her lap, and for the first time she felt the weight of what she had become. Not a hero, not a savior, not even a leader, but a bridge between the wild and the human. Later that night she walked through the village holding the staff, the mark on her arm glowing brighter than ever. The council gathered in the main hall waiting for her. No one gave speeches, no one asked for answers. They only listened as Alina spoke softly. The forest does not forget. It does not forgive quickly, but it has chosen to watch us, not with hate, but with hope. We were intruders once, but we can be part of it now. Not rulers, not owners, but guests, respectful ones. I have seen its heart and I carry its voice. No one clapped, no one shouted, but every face in the room reflected the same truth. Something greater had begun. The next day a new structure was built near the forest edge, not a tower, not a wall, but a shrine, a place of peace with symbols from both human and wild designs, where villagers and creatures alike could come without fear. Cub often stayed there, watching over the shrine with playful eyes, sometimes joined by other small beasts from the woods who trusted now like he did. Alina spent her mornings gathering herbs from both sides of the tree line and teaching children about balance. Not control, not science alone, but connection. How to listen before touching, how to wait before acting, how to earn trust without demand. One afternoon, as she stood watching the sky, 2 stars passed overhead, but they were not stars. They were ships, new colonists arriving. Alina knew what would happen next. New faces, new orders, new doubt, but she was ready. When the ships landed, she walked forward, alone, staff in hand, the cub beside her, glowing mark in full light, and met the new leaders. Face to face, they looked at her with curiosity and confusion. But before they could ask questions, she simply said, "This land is not yours to take, not anymore. It's ours to share if you're willing to learn." Behind her, the forest rustled as if listening. The trees swayed, not in warning, but in welcome. And deep inside the jungle mother stood tall once more, her eyes turned toward the horizon. Human of the green flame had spoken, and the wild had listened.